So I'd like to start by saying that one day I was chilling at Kentucky Fried Chicken. There you go. Minding my own business, eating food and finger licking. This dude walked up, strange and kind of funny, went up to the counter with his menu and his money. He didn't walk straight, kind of side to side. Asked this old lady, yo, is this Kentucky Fried? Lady said yes, smiled. He smiled back. He gave a quarter and his order, small fries. Big Mac. Nice. We've got some old school heads in the house. I decided to do that today. I decided to do that because I randomly decided to do that a few months ago at Catherine Smith Middle School in the Evergreen School District. Shout out to the Evergreen School District. And the students just could not understand why someone would go to KFC and order a Big Mac. So it sounds like some people are familiar with the song. Don't shout it out yet. Raise your hand if you know who it's by. All right, we got my guy right down front. I have a prize for you if you can name the group that this is by. Run DMC. There it is. I don't know if you all remember these, if you're all old enough. So this is your prize here. It's a T-shirt, and you know how Tupac had Thug Life written across his stomach. This says Hug Life, which is something that I created. There you go. So yeah, cassette tapes. I'm sorry it's a blurry picture. We didn't have high def photos back then. But this was the first tape that I bought with my own money when I was probably younger than those Catherine Smith Middle School students. And I would listen to it every day on one of these. I memorized it front to back. And around that time, I started making my own rap songs. So this is me rocking the mic at about 5 years old. So as Al mentioned, I've had the honor of giving keynotes here before, and I've kind of told my story of how I got into hip-hop culture at such a young age, the ways in which that started weaving into my work as an educator when I started teaching at a juvenile prison in Providence, Rhode Island, what it's meant for me to be a hip-hop head and educator of the Caucasian persuasion, and what I think educators can learn from hip-hop culture. That's what a lot of my work has been about. And you can see last year's keynote. It's online. I know BIE tweeted it out this morning. It was beautifully shot by James and his team. It's up on YouTube. So I want to share some fresh stuff today, but I do still want to give a quick sense of who I am and where my ideas come from. You can see my love of rap music is long-standing. My work as a teacher, writer, and public speaker has been about exploring the intersections between hip-hop culture and education, partially as a way to engage students because it's very successful at doing that, but also as a way of directly working against racism, classism, and moving all of us to a more just world. So that's really what my work is about. As Al mentioned, I wrote this book, Hip Hop Genius, which I think we'll have here today. It's about all of this. And it comes out of my experience both teaching in the prison and elsewhere, but also in running a youth program. And I started this youth program years ago, and it worked with young people who were coming out of prison, and it was a project-based program. We ran arts-based businesses with young people, and that's where this concept of Hug Life came from, because a lot of the young people identified with kind of a thug life culture, and our message to them was not to reject all of that culture, not to reject their friends that they had grown up with and that had, in some cases, wound them up in these tough situations, but rather to say, how can we flip that? And that flip is something that's very common in hip-hop culture. So how can we take all of that energy, all of that culture, but just take the negative aspects? So if for a young person who was dealing drugs, how can we turn that into dealing something creative instead of destructive? The art that they make, murals, rap songs, how can we turn that into dealing vegetables? Where's Steven from yesterday? How can we make it creative? And for young people who have been involved in violent acts, instead of doing harm to their peers, how can it become about bringing their peers together and working together, right? So that's why we said, drop the T, keep the rest of it, hug life. And that kind of rhetorical flip is very common in hip-hop culture. One of the most prevalent metaphors of that, I don't know if you can see this well, it's a young man doing a backflip on a mattress on the street. And this image is both a literal and metaphorical flip, because the way that hip-hop was created, as Jeff Chang, who's a hip-hop history scholar, says, if blues music came out of the conditions of forced and oppressive labor, hip-hop music really came out of the conditions of no work. You had young people who were in the South Bronx in the 1970s. The sanitation department wasn't coming through. There was trash on the streets. The education programs that they had access to, in most cases, were not good. They were being trained on vocational equipment that was outdated, and they weren't able to then go from there into getting jobs, right? So young people who were in those situations could have been destitute about it, but instead they did this. They created a flip, which is summed up nicely in this one line from a Lupe Fiasco song. I backflipped on the mattress they slept on me on. And what he means by that is, while people were underestimating him, or this character, it pulled off this crazy, new, inventive dance move, and not only invented a culture in that community at that time, but really an enduring culture that's been kind of the dominant global pop culture for the last several decades, right? And is being studied by the most prestigious institutions. Earlier this year, I went and saw Nas, a rapper, perform his debut album, Illmatic, at the Kennedy Center with the National Symphony Orchestra, right? So hip hop has really made this amazing transformation and continues to grow. It's being used by every marketing firm, et cetera, right? But it all came out of this moment of adversity that young people had the wherewithal to flip on. So think about what that kind of agility in the face of adversity means for our students, for Black and Latino and Native young people in our schools, for poor white students, for students who are designated special needs or special education, for us as teachers, who often become the scapegoats for everything wrong with education. What does it mean to backflip on that garbage that's left on our stoops? So I wrote this whole book about it. I made a short video. They both can be found at this site. Over the past few years, in a large part in partnership with the Buck Institute for Education, I've been exploring what these ideas mean specifically in project-based learning. So I made a little short link for you. That's last year's keynote. Jot it down. Don't play it out loud on your iPad right now, but hopefully in your leisure time you can watch it. We also made an abridged animated version with Rachel, who's back there doing the illustrations here, which is definitely worth watching just for the animations alone. It's very, very cool. That's a short link for that one. I'm excited to share some new stuff with you today, but since I know that you're one day into this PBL world, a lot of you have started PBL 101, I couldn't resist sharing some of my thoughts about what hip-hop means for project-based learning. And I've created these hip-hop PBL essentials. But to keep myself moving, because I have a lot of other things I want to share, I'm going to keep it to 3 minutes. I know it sounds impossible, but I'm on a mission. All right. So when I ask students why, thanks, Al. When I ask students why they like their favorite rap artists, before they mention their flow, their lyrics, the beats, oftentimes what they talk about is that the rapper is real. And that's a very important value in hip-hop culture and in education. Susie was just telling me that she was meeting with teachers in Mexico, and their students said that the most important thing to them was that they keep it real. In hip-hop, what that means is authenticity. So this is a cell phone photo that a friend of mine sent me that you totally can't see, so I'm not even going to tell you about it. But it's an example of keeping it real. Basically, it's a G-Shock watch that he was really proud he got for a good price until his girlfriend pointed out that it actually says G-Shook up top. And because it wasn't authentic, we all clowned him. Because in hip-hop, it's really important that what you have and what you do is real. So what does this mean for project-based learning? First of all, it means we want to keep things real world, right? We want to get students out of the school and let them do projects that really see how things play out there. In some cases, we can do that using the World Wide Web, right? And we can get students outside the school walls by getting them online. So that is a possibility. But it's really also great when we get them out of the building. Second piece of keeping it real in PBL is real work, right? And what this means is that we're engaging students in the actual work that someone in the career or the profession that they're studying would do. So we're not doing a fake architecture program with students studying architecture. We're getting them on AutoCAD, right? We're having them participate in design charrettes. They're creating real blueprints. And hopefully, they're building something. The third piece of keeping it real that I talked about last year is about keeping it relevant or relevant to students' lives. This is especially important for students whose culture is not reflected in the dominant paradigms that are often in our schools, right? How do we bring in their culture? How do we bring in pieces of their family, their community? How do we bring in the things that they're most passionate about and want to create and make that a part of their education? And since I still have a whole minute left, I'm going to add one more this year that I didn't talk about in the past. And that is that while the first three interpretations of realness are crucial to making projects engaging, respectful of students' cultures, and preparing them for the real world after high school, what about not just preparing them for the real world, but actually empowering them to change what that world looks like? Right? So another part of what's important about keeping projects real is giving students the opportunity and encouragement to address pressing social issues of their choosing. This is engaging for students, and it allows them to experience agency, which is an incredibly important part of the experience for them to have at their young age. So I want to share some examples of these kinds of keeping it real, all 4 of these. And the first one is one that I think yesterday's keynote, Stephen Ritz, would like. It comes from the High School for Recording Arts in St. Paul, Minnesota, where students, many of the students have been through a lot of other schools. They've been adjudicated. They've experienced homelessness. And they address those issues and more. Check it out. I want to turn it up a little.
The sky, too, is everyone's sewer. This is the great airlift. Thousands of tons of daily rubbish on a free ride.
Okay, we living in filth, equator on tilt. As the world spinning, we polluting up the air. The old folks leave, but the kids stay here. So why you still here? You need to treat it like you care. I'm clean up in the air, yeah. Clean it up in here till you clean up in the air. Treat it like you care, yeah. Clean it up in here till you clean up in the air.
I'm clean up in the air, pollution can't faze me. Get up off your couch and stop being lazy. Don't you hear the earth screaming out, save me? You need to go green, ain't no maybes. Equator on tilt, I just hope it don't fall. Trying to reduce this carbon, I don't know about y'all. Do your part to help, whether it's big or small, and you can make an impact from Egan to St. Paul. We got these little baby crying and these old people dying. They just burning fossil fuels, they ain't trying. When they know alternatives is what we supplying, yeah. Call us the green team, cause we ain't using coal, you know we using steam. We junior eco-activists with a dream. Hurry up, let's save the earth, I can hear her start to scream.
Okay, we living in filth, equator on tilt. As the world spinning, we polluting up the air. The old folks leave, but the kids stay here. So why you still here? You need to treat it like you care. I'm clean up in the air, yeah. Clean it up in here till you clean up in the air. Treat it like you care. Clean it up in here till you clean up in the air.
All right, so I cut it there, but it's a great video, yeah. You can find this video and a lot of really great videos from the High School for Recording Arts on YouTube if you search HSRA MN for Minnesota. This video was produced by students who were designated as special education. All the videos at the school come out of what's designated the special education class. It was real world in that they obviously got out in the real world to shoot it, but they also used it as part of a campaign they called Get Your Green On, which involved music videos online, putting out CDs, digital music distribution, touring, and speaking at conferences. They had to do real work, from science research to songwriting to this high-quality video production. It was relevant to them, right? They were using an art form that they were excited about to talk about issues with immediate relevance to their lives. And of course, they took on a real issue of not just societal, but planetary importance in talking about pollution. Over the last 15 or so years that the High School for Recording Arts has been around, they've taken on a ton of real issues. These were just some that came to my mind quickly of projects that I'd seen. And I think it's important to note that it's not just about students studying a real issue or even informing people about that issue. In some cases, it's about making a real tangible impact on that issue. So in one case, the seatbelt safety campaign that the students were engaged in at the school, the students at High School for Recording Arts are credited with actually getting a law changed in Minnesota because one of the students approached the governor with a video camera and crew and asked him his position on this law that he had refused to comment on up to that point, and he said he supported it. And later, when the law passed, people said that they thought it was because he was caught on video by these students saying, yes, he supported it, that they ended up having to sort of push the law through. So students can have real power in making these changes. I was just visiting my brother in Oakland, who teaches at a project-based learning school, and I got the program from the graduation at his school, and I was just amazed. There's a small school, high school, 21 graduates, and every single one of them, their project had to do with a real issue in the world. I wanted to share a few. I mean, I could share all 21, but that would take a little while. Denise, a number from 1 to 21. 8. 8 was by Lisbeth Maldonado, and her senior thesis project was Education, Not Incarceration, School to Prison Pipeline Prevention. Someone else, a number from 1 to 21. 18. Jonathan Mejia Naveda. His senior thesis project title was No Status, No Self, HIV Testing Event. One more. Rachel. 3. Jose Cartagena Miranda. His senior thesis project title was Young Oakland, News for Youth by Youth. So we could go on doing this, for quite a while here with all 21 of these projects, but I just thought it was incredible that every single one of the projects fired on those cylinders. I do want to share one more video because I often share these music videos and they have rap, and they're from a high school, and I have teachers say, well, I'm not really hip-hop, I couldn't do a rap video, or I teach elementary and middle school, so I'm not sure that this would apply. So I want to show you another kind of music video. Do we have any elementary teachers in the house? Nice, wow, okay, so, and what about Lady Gaga fans? All right.
It doesn't matter if you're scared of them or not. Just open up your heart, because snakes were just born this way.
Our teachers told us in second grade we'd be herpetologists. If you don't know, that means we study snakes from everywhere around the world. There's nothing wrong with having scaly skin. We say snakes are all made perfectly. So watch them slither through, 'cause they'll go far, even with no legs and arms. No need to be scared of snakes, they're not all the same. You can't change who they are. Snakes are born this way, they are a part of this world. Don't judge snakes by their looks, you can't change who they are. Snakes are born this way. Did you know that without snakes, mice would eat up all our grains? There would be no food for cows. Without cows and milk, no pizza and no ice cream. We need snakes, baby, they are born this way. You can't change who they are. Snakes are born this way.
That was great.
That was actually a really high pitch.
So you can see how the second graders from the Conservatory Lab Charter School in Boston, Massachusetts, which, by the way, is an expeditionary learning school, and I know that Ron Berger is going to be here from Expeditionary Learning later this week, who's been a mentor of mine, and I highly recommend that you meet him if you have the opportunity. But you can see how the students approached an academic study of science and made it real for themselves. The video was put online. It's been viewed over 30,000 times. I hear it's even being presented at a conference in Napa today. They did real work. They read scientific articles. They met with folks at Harvard University. They visited a nature sanctuary. Then, as you saw a little bit of in the video, they created anatomically accurate scientific drawings. They went through multiple drafts, excuse me, produced not only this song and video and played all the music, but also produced a book of those scientific drawings. The project was relevant to their lives. They got to use a song that they were excited about at the time and also addressed what was, for many of them, a very real fear of snakes. But it also addressed a real issue, a bigger issue than just a fear of snakes, and that issue was around being judged without really being known, right? Which ties into this issue of bullying, which is huge in the lives of second graders as well as older students. So I just want to ask you to please keep all 4 elements of this mantra of Project Realness in your minds as you go through the next several days and when you get back to your schools. Because it's not only keeping it real through PBL that's important and the best way to prepare students for life. I think it's also the most respectful way to engage them, and it lets them take direct action towards solving issues that affect them most directly, whether it's second graders addressing bullying or high school students addressing pollution, right? But today I want to talk about the implications of project-based learning for another group of people who deserve respect and to be listened to for solutions. Teachers. This video is what inspired me to want to talk about this.
The vocabulary matrix. What's the strategy we're using today? Vocabulary matrix. And we are also going to use apposition. What else are we going to use? Apposition. So repeat after me. We will use accurately, grade appropriate, general academic, and domain specific words, and phrases, when writing, or speaking, by choosing, flexibly, from a range of strategies. The strategy today that we're using two strategies. How many strategies are we using? Two. The two strategies are apposition and vocabulary matrix. What I want you to do is turn to your AV partner and I want you to tell them what are the two strategies we're going to use in vocabulary. Ready?
Okay, that felt like it was 45 minutes, but it was actually, that was actually 60 seconds. So on the count of three, I just want you to just shout out loud how watching that made you feel. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I heard a lot of anger. When I saw that, it infuriated me. And I go around and I do a lot of professional development work with teachers. So I wanted to have some sympathy for whoever was presenting there and think maybe this was just a bad minute of a not great session, but not as bad as this maybe looked. But a friend of mine's sister was there and said that it was actually like this the entire day and throughout the entire training. And that these consultants had come in from the UK and California, nothing wrong with California, but had come in from the UK and California and were presenting at teachers like this. So I just want to say something about this. I was raised by teachers. My parents were teachers. My grandparents were teachers. A lot of my parents' friends when I was growing up were teachers. And most of the young people that I grew up with have become teachers or work with young people in some way. We have a serious problem in this country. We do not respect teachers enough. Yeah. We do not respect teachers enough. It's not enough to give our students real-world, relevant projects that respect them as thinkers and problem solvers. We need to treat our teachers with the same respect. And that's part of why what BIE is doing is so powerful and important to me, right? Because through trainings like PBL 101, teachers are getting the chance to learn a new pedagogical approach through that pedagogical approach, right? So in the same way that the training argues projects are the best way for students to learn, they demonstrate this concept by using projects to teach teachers PBL. So the flip that I want to ask you all to consider today is for us to think explicitly together about what the project-based approach can mean for teachers. And I'm embarrassed to admit how long it took me to think about project-based learning in this way and realize that this is part of the reason that I love it. Part of the reason is because it's way more engaging for us as teachers. Would you rather pass out and collect worksheets with multiple choice science problems, or engage with your students around building a boat out of cardboard and duct tape and trying to figure out why some floated and some didn't? Or watch your students design a video game that teaches younger students the scientific method? Or help your students develop a nature guide that takes folks in their local community through a local nature preserve? PBL is way more engaging for teachers, and I don't think we should be ashamed of talking about that as one of the reasons that it's important. Because if our teachers are not engaged, because they're bored as hell from administering a standardized test over and over again, then they will not be effective educators, and sooner than later, they'll probably start seeking other career options. But what if it doesn't stop there? What if the reason that PBL is important for teachers isn't just about the fact that it's more engaging for them to present or administer projects with their students? As we look at the data around teacher retention, and as we consider the daunting problems that plague public education, I can't help but wonder, if we were engaging teachers more actively in tackling some of those challenges, if we were giving teachers the kinds of opportunities we're so committed to creating for our students, might they like their jobs more and be able to stay in them longer, right? Might we even solve some of the big problems in education? So this is our version of that hip-hop flip. Teachers, like the creators of hip-hop, have been dealt a crappy hand. We're under-resourced, we're given other people's trash and expected to turn it into treasures, and then we're blamed for the very problems that we're out here solving. So that's the mattress that's been left in front of our house. The mattress is, in some ways, that professional development video from Chicago that I just showed you. The flip is using a project-based approach, not just as a teaching methodology, but as an approach to our work as educators. And this is the flip that I want to propose to you today. What if teachers could actually be using a project-based approach to tackle real issues in their classrooms, schools, and communities? What would that look like, and how can we make it happen, has become my driving question. Because I don't think driving questions are just something that we do in a kind of contrived student project. I think they're what motivate all of us, young and old, throughout our lives. And I think, did you all study driving questions yesterday? Does this fit the criteria? You can't get the answer on Google, right? I know that's part of it. And it's tweetable. It's under 140 characters. So I think I did it. I'm really excited to share with you some of the initial thoughts I have about answering this because I've actually been getting to explore this question over the last several months with an organization that I just started working for, which, as Al pointed out, has a strikingly similar acronym to BIE. And I've been waiting all year to do this. You kind of stole my thunder. But here it is, the Buck Institute for Education, the Business Innovation Factory, or BIF, as people call it. And this organization is a nonprofit organization that's been around for about a decade. And it uses human-centered design to create new models in education, in healthcare, and other social sectors. I run something called the Student Experience Lab at BIF. And in this lab, we recognize that, unfortunately, this statement by Pedro Noguera is too often true. We live in a country where those who know the most about education have the least say, and those who know the least have the most say. Right? I'm getting that resonance in the room. Yeah. We see this playing out in the world around us, but at the Student Experience Lab, we refuse to accept it. And we call it the Student Experience Lab because we really believe that our work as educators should be based on the experiences that students have, as well as other stakeholders, first and foremost, teachers. Which is why we've been piloting a project over the last year called Teachers Design for Education, or TD for E, or for Ed. And the idea behind this project is simple. It's that teachers are some of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to our education system, and that if we empower teachers to generate solutions to the challenges in their classrooms, schools, and communities, it will be a rewarding process for them that will generate valuable solutions for our society. So we proposed this idea to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They provided some seed funding to build an in-person training, which we've been piloting, and an online platform that uses principles of design thinking to support teachers in tackling challenges of their own choosing. So let me translate that into PBL slang for you. Teachers get voice and choice. They develop driving questions. They go through a process of inquiry and innovation, and then they publicly present a product. There's even more parallels, but that just gives you a little sense of how design thinking and PBL are really, in many ways, very intertwined. So over the last several months, we've gotten to pilot this in Rhode Island, Philadelphia, and in Chicago, where you saw that other video from. So I want to show you 30 seconds of video of our work with teachers in Chicago. There's nothing spectacular about this. It's just shot on a little camera. It's a little shaky. The sound isn't great. But I want you to see it just to see how different it is from that last video. And it starts with a teacher at Wells Prep Elementary and Middle School, a public school in Chicago, talking about the work that she and her colleagues have been doing.
Academically or, disciplinary.
So in terms of, we have about 5 minutes to give feedback to them, but so I figured we can do a kind of spitball, and having you guys listen, take notes on whatever. So if anyone has any feedback or thoughts.
I have a question. The surveys that went home to the parents, were they anonymous? That was my first question.
Sure.
So I'll give you a little more context in a second, but you see that teachers are sitting in a circle. They're engaging with each other. There's a facilitator who's trying to bring teachers' questions for each other out so that they can push each other's work forward. This is what an example of what it can look like when teachers are engaged in real projects together. So here's a little more about this project. Here's the team from Wells Prep that we were working with, and their driving question was, how do we educate the whole child? How do we use qualitative data, personal information from students' lives, to help understand their quantitative data, their test scores? Because they felt like they were being pushed to look at data all the time, but only a very narrow piece of data around test scores. So through collaborative workshops, where ideas were brainstormed and refined, and the teachers got to push each other's ideas, through hands-on individual activities, where teachers began to sketch and physically prototype their ideas, and through weekly teacher-led workshops at their schools, and the use of the online curriculum that we created, the Wells Prep teachers have been engaged in the process of using design thinking to figure out how to use a more holistic set of data about their students. They came up with a method of gathering qualitative data through surveys and personality assessments, and then developing an organizational system to track that qualitative data and weave it in with the quantitative test data that they have so that they could look at trends, patterns, surprising findings, and ultimately help develop systems for teaching the whole child and targeting supports to their students, which they believe will increase academic achievement. So this is one example of the many powerful projects that we saw in this pilot process. Earlier this month, we brought together all the teachers from the pilot in Rhode Island, and the energy was just amazing. For those of you who have done projects with students in the past, you know that energy when people are engaged in a project that they're really excited about. It was the exact same feeling, but it was really exciting to feel it with colleagues instead of just with students. The teachers were so excited to share the projects that they developed with others. They were so excited to give feedback. And several of the teachers said to me that this process of doing this project with their colleagues had re-inspired them, that they had been thinking about not returning next year to teach, and that this had made them want to come back. So it was that powerful. I wanted to share a few more of the projects. This is Team El Centro from Philadelphia. They're a project-based high school. These 4 teachers from El Centro identified this question: how can we improve school culture? So they went through a series of activities together, like mapping all of the stakeholders in their school community that were involved in creating the culture. They went out and talked to these stakeholders. They came back and shared and analyzed results. They found a particular challenge that perhaps some of you can relate to, which is that being a project-based school, a lot of their students were coming from not so project-based schools, so they needed to particularly help acculturate students to that environment. And they saw an opportunity through this work to engage a specific group of stakeholders, older students and alumni, in acculturating the newer students. So they brainstormed what forms that could take and physically prototyped some of them. And they're now piloting a student and alumni leadership group that's going to lead orientation and, in fact, a whole few-month gateway process for new students coming into the school. And you can see here, this is their first publicly presented product. This is the student and alumni group that came together to start planning this new gateway for new students to the school. So I could share teacher projects with you all day today because I'm really high and excited about these, but I'm just going to give you one last one. This is a team of elementary school teachers from across the school district in Warwick, Rhode Island. And they felt like the professional development in their school district was lacking. They felt like it was a little too much like the stuff we saw in that first video from Chicago. So they came up with an out-of-school, underground meetup for teachers. And I have a video that I want to share of them talking about the process and showing some footage of the first meetup, which they call Create and Collaborate.
We're always kind of the go-to people in our buildings, and I think that brings us all together as a district. We all have that drive to make a change and to keep moving forward, to keep moving education forward.
So a lot of initiatives keep coming down to us from the district level, and unfortunately there's not a lot of time to digest that.
So we knew that we wanted to create a infrastructure to basically improve professional development within our district.
And therefore directly impact student learning.
Yes. We sent out a survey expecting maybe 50 people to respond, and when we have 140-something respondents of elementary teachers in Warwick that truly just gave us their honest opinion.
When we finished our reflection, we had like little bits and pockets of reflection.
I think that was one of our most difficult nights together, times that we spent, outside
the
of
reflection. It was very enlightening. Like when you finally
Yes,
put it all together, you
At about 10 o'clock at night, when we thought we were going to kill each other,
we looked at that makes sense.
People wanted to collaborate. They wanted to meet, and their definition of collaboration was different, I think, from what we were looking at it as. They were collaborating, but, on the fly, in the, bathroom stalls, over the stalls, at the lunchroom, at the copy machine.
We needed to come up with something, and we found that an underground learning community was the way to do it. And we came up with Create and Collaborate. But it'll be great when there's enough of each grade level to sustain itself a little bit. And also for it to not always be eventually just the 4 of us doing that one.
And to take something tangible out of that meeting and to walk into your classroom the next day and to actually use it, it's a great selling point.
We all brought one thing that they could make and take, and then we also all brought something in terms of technology that they could implement into their classrooms.
We polled out everybody during the night to see what was going on with their thought process and whether they were comfortable and happy and, would they come back.
You send teachers back after one of our meetings and they are energized, and an energized teacher is much better than a frustrated one, that's for sure.
In terms of professional development in our city, it's light years above what they do, honestly. Talking at you and not with you and not interested in your ideas, there's no collaboration.
You just really feel like you're surrounded by a team of friends that want to help you succeed and ultimately your children.
It's stuff that we can actually use and take instead of sitting and listening to somebody just shout information out at us.
You don't think outside of your own district, and there are other great things happening and other initiatives. I think communicating it to our school committee and to our administration and letting them know that people are doing this. Granted, it's on their own time, but can you imagine what the outcomes would be if you allowed it to happen during our day?
I think it goes back to that we know all teachers have something of value to offer us.
Sometimes you have to think outside of the box, and I think that's what we've done here for teachers in our district.
There's life outside of our classrooms, and there's opportunities outside of our classrooms when we're still teaching, but there's still other things to really be done. And knowing that I've not always wanted to just stay in my classroom for the next 30 years, but really kind of make an impact larger than that. I feel like this is the first time I've actually been able to see that actually come to fruition.
You impact your students all the time. We teach, we see the difference that we can make in their lives, but I feel like now I have something that I can share with my colleagues and help them grow just as much.
I love this. I love seeing teachers empowered and taking action to make the education system better. So my goal right now is to support, foster, and spread this kind of work. Next month, we're making the online TD for Ed platform available to teachers all over, just to be able to log in and use what we've developed there. And actually, this Friday, my colleague Jeff, who built the platform, is going to be out here with us. For those of you who are staying for the PBL World Tech Expo, he's going to be sharing it and giving some sneak peek registration logins for the site. So hopefully, we'll be able to share that with some of you. But this is really just one way for teachers to be engaged in projects, right? It's a cool platform, but it's just one example. And you saw the teachers from Warwick developed another in a period of about 6 weeks through their Create and Collaborate PD sessions. And there are many, many more. What I'm hoping to do today by sharing these examples is to raise some questions for you. So as you go through the rest of this week at PBL World and then beyond, I'm hoping that you'll ask yourselves, how can I use project-based learning in my own professional growth and development? So think about yesterday, the things that you learned in the workshops and sessions you were in, and which of those things you could apply not just to take and do with your students, but actually to do yourself or do with your colleagues. And as you go through the next few days, I hope you'll continue to ask that question and continue to look at the activities with a dual lens. How do I use this with my students, and how do I use it with myself? I'd also specifically love for you to consider this question. How can I use a project-based approach to improve my classroom, school, community, and education? I know this is a lot to ask of you, that teachers are already busy, that on average, US teachers are teaching 25 to 30% more than colleagues in other nations. So I feel bad giving you this gargantuan task of solving these problems as well. But I also know that you hold brilliant ideas, and that it would be foolish of all of us to not give you the time and tools to share them. So to that point, I have one more question, which is for administrators. Admins, do we have admins in the house? Superintendents, principals? Nice, so you're not off the hook, this one's for you. How can I give my teachers opportunities to engage in project-based learning? How can you restructure PD in your school or school system to honor and take full advantage of your teachers' insights and brilliance? These are important questions I really want you to ask yourself, but let's also come back to that important question that the students at Catherine Smith Middle School asked me. Why would you order a Big Mac at KFC? Run DMC offered the only logical explanation emphatically in the chorus of that song. You can't participate. Raise your hand if you know the chorus of the song we did earlier. What is it? I got a prize for you if you got it. You be illin'. I got a copy of my book for you. Nice. So what does that mean? Obviously, illness in the literal sense is not a desirable condition. You don't want to fall ill. But in hip-hop slang, we often do these flips. Ill can actually be used to describe something so great that it's sickening. And that's kind of a common thing in hip-hop culture. Sick can actually be used in that same way. Or Run DMC on that same album have the kind of quintessential example of this.
Not bad, meaning bad, but bad, meaning good.
That was fun. You caught that?
Not bad, meaning bad, but bad, meaning good.
Right? They flipped the whole meaning of the word bad. Not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good. So why would it be good to be illin', the way the dude who walked into KFC strange and kind of funny was illin'? Why should we strive for our middle school students or ourselves to ask for a Big Mac at KFC? I turn to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words on maladjustment.
Modern psychology has a word that is probably used more than any other word in psychology. It is the word maladjusted. It is the ringing cry of modern child psychology, maladjusted. Now, of course, we all want to live the well-adjusted life in order to avoid neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But as I move toward my conclusion, I would like to say to you today, in a very honest manner that there are some things in our society and some things in our world for which I'm proud to be maladjusted. And I call upon all men of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realized. I must honestly say to you that I never intend to adjust myself through racial segregation and discrimination. I never intend to adjust myself to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few and leave millions of God's children smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society.
It's a powerful speech, as all of Dr. King's are. He goes on to call for an international association for the advancement of creative maladjustment, or what Run DMC might call an international association for the advancement of illin. Creative maladjustment is the term that Dr. King uses, though, and I think it's an important one for us to consider as educators. A mentor of mine, Herb Cole, has written about that. I definitely recommend checking his work out. Real-world relevant projects are not just a good way to teach the Common Core or to prepare students for the real world. They actually open up the possibility to question and redesign the very system that they're a part of. And if we allow them, they open this possibility for ourselves and for our students. And I want to bring things back to our students because hopefully they're why we're all here. So I want to show you one last video about a project that I'm currently working on with a group of young people, high school students in Providence, Rhode Island, where we're teaching students the ideas of design thinking. And I would recommend, if you really want to understand the power of design thinking with students, I'd recommend you look at a TED Talk by a young woman named Emily Pilliton. But Dave and the BIE team are a few steps ahead of me, and she's actually the keynote tomorrow morning. So we're all going to get to hear about her design and build work with students. The project that I'm embarking on in Rhode Island is a specific design project, though. We're working with a group of students, partnering with an organization called Youth in Action and with the Rhode Island Department of Education. And the students are actually going to design a student-centered school. And the Department of Education has committed to opening the school that the students design. So I just want you to share a little bit about the project in the students' own words.
There are students like me. No matter how hard we try, the system just doesn't work.
Teachers, counselors, families, and support groups
try different ways to help,
but it doesn't seem to work.
For students like me,
him,
like her,
like you, we get mad,
confused,
frustrated, and bored.
Some of us give up, and some of us flunk out.
So we, as a group of students from different schools across Rhode Island,
are getting together because enough is enough.
It's time for us to design something new.
With the backing of our state's education leader,
we are going on an adventure
to design a new school.
This is Students Design for Education, SD4E.
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 Students are rising up
to create the education that we want
and we deserve.
Students are rising up to bring the excitement of our learning back to school.
Students are rising up
to use proven design tools.
But we can't do it alone.
So join us
in changing the way we tackle education.
So join us.
Because this is my education.
This is my future.
This is our future.
We should not ask for a Big Mac at KFC. We shouldn't be eating any of that crap. But we should refuse to accept what's on the menu. We should continue to ask for what we and our students need, for what we know is right, and sometimes just for the unexpected, to remind everyone that another different world is possible and that we and our students must be a part of defining, designing, and creating it. Please never accept injustice, never accept bad professional development, never force meaningless work, even projects, on your students. Strive for and support creative maladjustment. In other words, be illin. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.